That's weird. That's gross. You're talking about other people's genitals.
What?
We're talking about transgenderism. What do you mean? That is the conversation. All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. This is Morty, and I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Hit that like and subscribe, and let's party. So there's been a lot of talk about Jazz Jennings. If you're not familiar, there is a trans woman who has a show on TLC, transitioned at 17 surgically, and socially at 4 years old. There's been a lot of problems. So we have a clip from the PDB Podcast where Tim Pool was on. Tim Pool uses Jazz Jennings to make his point very eloquently a lot. And I thought this was a great way to demonstrate that. So let's dive right in.
You know, so that one right there I watched this morning, and the way she pitches it, you know, at 6 years old, she knew she was he knew he was stuck in a man's body, and there was a she. And then mom and dad supported her going through the transition, and and then she takes all these pills and everything, and she see, mermaid, she swims like mermaid, but it's a boy. This guy is now, so parents supported that. Anyways, take it from here to where it's at today. He's now put on 100 pounds. I think he weighs 240 pounds, 230 pounds. He responded to a lot of comments that was said on her channel, Matt Walsh, Shapiro, a bunch of other guys. What's your biggest frustration with Jazz Jennings and DeSantis in Florida?
Notice how PBD used the he pronoun all the way through.
So the simple version is, I think Jazz Jennings is the victim of severe psychological and physical abuse from her family. I don't mind using pronouns for someone like for a trans person. I have friends who are trans. The pronoun thing is nothing to me. Jazz, you can't be 6 years old and decide to permanently sterilize yourself. And that's what happened with Jazz Jennings. Jazz will never have children. Jazz underwent puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy, which result in an inability to reproduce and actually have what I would just keep family friendly and call adult sensation.
Orgasm.
The left likes to respond saying, how weird that you would bring that up, bro. I'm not here to be shamed. I don't care.
Yeah, that's what Lance from the Surfs tried to do when they were on Tim's show. And he brought this up as a very serious aspect of these surgeries, that you lose sensation. And that's a big part of being an adult, is getting those types of sensations. And Lance didn't have anything to say. Oh, that's weird. That's weird. That's gross. You're talking about other people's genitals.
What?
We're talking about transgenderism. What do you mean? That is the conversation.
We're talking about the future of this country and what we are determining to be a good or bad thing. So if you watch the videos of, well, let me slow down. Jazz Jennings was 3 years old when they said they thought Jazz was trans. At 6, Jazz says, obviously you mentioned I'm trans. I believe at 7 years old, they're showing Jazz off and the family's doing press and stuff like that. Jazz, the puberty blockers prohibit the adult development of a human being in terms of their sexual characteristics, which results in a bunch of very, very serious and severe complications.
Yep, and they'll say that, oh, it's all reversible. It's just like putting puberty on pause. It's like the song of puberty. You just play pause, and then as soon as you stop taking the puberty blockers, the song just continues right on the next note. That is almost a direct quote from a doctor from the What is a Woman documentary. I mean, obviously, it is completely incorrect. It can happen, but that is not the way that these drugs were developed.
The reason this has become more pronounced in terms of, like, the reason why we're talking about it now, several years ago, when discussing the issue of kids and trans kids, I talked about how I felt Jazz would eventually come out and be what we would describe as a straight male, or something to that effect. What happened was Jazz, before the age of puberty, was saying on TV and things like that she was attracted to boys. After this age, around 13 or 14, Jazz says, I'm pansexual, I'm attracted to everybody. Today, Jazz is dating women, at least.
Now, it doesn't mean that just because you're attracted to one sex and you want to be, those things are not necessarily aligned. But it is what we would expect for somebody who's being forced into this type of lifestyle. And I want to talk about Munchausen by proxy syndrome. It's a psychological thing that I think is happening to a lot of people, but I'll bring it up in a moment.
At least according to the reports. I'm unsurprised to hear that Jazz is biologically male. I'm not surprised that a biological male is attracted to females. That's 98% of biological males. So when you look at a story like that, then you go back to the story of John Money. John Money was, I don't even know what to call him. He took
a monster.
He was a doctor who took 2 children.
Sick name, by the way.
This
Money.
this is a horrifyingly evil man who tortured children.
Okay.
He part of his, I don't think Tim brings this up, but part of his work was documenting the orgasms of, I believe it was 2-year-olds, if not 2 months old. I think it was 2-year-olds. 2-year-olds. It was so crucial to the understanding of humanity to know what a 2-year-old's orgasm is like. You can't make this shit up.
Not a good guy.
Not a good guy at all. There were 2 children, David Reimer, of course, and I think David and I forgot the brother's name. So they were twin boys. One had a botched circumcision. John Money went to the family and said, gender is a social construct. If we surgically alter the baby, we can raise this male as a female, and they will never know the difference, and they'll live a happy life.
So it was a botched circumcision. It wasn't anything like born intersex or anything. They did a circumcision, they cut off too much. And they were like, oh, all right, well, let's just, gender's a social construct. Let's just raise this one as a girl.
John Money then forced these young children to engage in simulated sexual acts on each other. They both ended up killing themselves. When you look at a story like that, you have some concerns about David Reimer eventually committed suicide at 38. It's very sad. And his brother died of an overdose at 36.
Anybody surprised by that? Anybody?
So maybe they weren't twins. Maybe I was wrong with it. When you look at a story like that, you have concerns about whether or not we should surgically or medically alter children who can't make these decisions for themselves. If a 6-year-old comes to you and says they know something, it doesn't necessarily mean they do. So I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. But now when you look at the story of Jazz Jennings, where we currently are, and my issue particularly with the DeSantis administration that wanted to make this a fight, I'm here. Here's what happens. A video emerges more recently. Jazz Jennings has become morbidly obese, severely depressed, suffering from very serious mental issues. Jazz Jennings' mother says on the show that she wakes Jazz up in the middle of the night, grabs the dilator, lubricates it, and says, if you don't stick this in your vagina, I will.
So for those of you who don't know what she's talking about, the mother, not Tim being she, when you get bottom surgery, as a man to become a trans woman, they make a wound. And because it is a wound and not, like when you, I don't even know what to compare it to. But you have to use essentially a dildo and stick it in and make sure that it stays open. Otherwise, it will close up. And so Jazz isn't doing this. And Jazz's mom is saying, I'm going to do it for you.
Now, let me explain to you what a dilator is. When someone undergoes what they refer to as bottom surgery, it creates a permanent wound. That is not an insult. That is not meant to be derisive. It is a fact statement. The wound attempts to close. Trans people have to use what's called an acrylic dilator with lubrication to force it into the wound to make sure the wound does not close.
Basically, a dildo.
The purpose of this wound is so that men can penetrate it with their penises for sexual gratification. If
there is no other function for that wound, there is no other function for that wound.
If Jazz is not engaging in this dilation, I would make the assumption that Jazz is uninterested in keeping this wound open.
That makes a lot of sense. If you want the wound open, you have to dilate it. So if you're not dilating it, maybe it means that you don't want this wound. And yet the mother is saying, I'm going to do it for you. And she says something even worse. But before we get to that, I want to bring back this idea of Munchausen by proxy. So Munchausen syndrome is something where you will purposely make yourself sick or hurt yourself to get the attention of other people, specifically doctors. Munchausen by proxy is when you harm somebody else. Typically, it's a parent harming their child to get the attention. And there's famous cases where parents, often mothers, will be mildly poisoning their kids. So the kid is always sick. The kid always needs to be in the hospital, and the mother gets off on that. Maybe not sexually, but that excites her. That is a mental disorder. Munchausen by proxy.
Jazz's mother is on television saying, I wake her up in the middle of the night and say, if you don't stick this in your vagina, I will. In another clip, Jazz's mother says, if she goes off to college and that thing seals up, I will wring her neck. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's a turn of phrase. And I'm like, I don't care, okay? If you have a child, we're now an adult, who has undergone all of these surgeries, and Jazz had several complications, very serious complications,
which they will never tell you that can happen when you are going to go through with these surgeries. They won't mention it.
because of the puberty blockers, sexual characteristics do not develop. You can then not perform an actual, what they would call a penile inversion vaginoplasty, to create a wound for the purpose of sexual gratification of like if a trans person wants to have sex, right? You can't do it. I look at this and say, okay, look, I don't know where we draw the line on whether or not Jazz, as an autonomous adult, is going to say they're satisfied with their life and we should stop there. I simply put it this way. If I'm in my apartment and I hear a man and a woman yelling and I hear pounding and yelling, I mean, you might want to investigate. You know, you hear a woman screaming, what's
going on over there?
You might want to call the police. I'm not saying you do every single time. You don't know what's going on, but I'm kind of concerned about if you hear muffled screaming of a woman and a man yelling at her and then banging, and you go, I'm sure there's two sides to this. I'm going to mind my own business. That's not me. That's not my moral framework. My moral framework is either I go knock on the door and ask him if everything's all right, or I just call the police and say, look, sounds like this guy might be battering this woman. Cop might show up, and they were like playing a game of Twister or something, and she's playing a race car game. Who knows?
Better safe than sorry.
We have a video where the mother says to Jazz, and this is part of the viral video that came out, you are your own worst enemy. Jazz says, I'm depressed. I don't feel like myself. I keep going negative.
I don't feel like myself. Maybe it's because you changed who yourself is before you understood what the actual implications of that would be. If you are finding this as crazy as I am, you will find a home at the Indian Jesus Discord server where the party never ends. That's right. We are in there 24/7. Chatting away, and after every live stream, we go in there for a live panel where you're not stuck behind your keyboard. We are there live together in the same room, cameras on, cameras off, whatever makes you comfortable. It is a good time. Come and join us.
The mother says, I know you are your own worst enemy. I'm like, no, that sounds like psychological abuse. In and of itself, not that much. When you then have a video of the mother saying, if you don't stick this in, I will do it. Well, that sounds like a threat of physical force against a person who is rejecting this medical practice you're imposing on them.
Sounds like Munchausen by proxy syndrome.
If you then say, if she does not, I will wring her neck, you combine those things, and I'm like, I think this woman is severely brutalizing this individual. Yep. Does that not warrant the DeSantis administration to humbly knock on the door and say, is everything okay? Can we speak with you privately? It may be ultimately that Jazz Jennings says, this is fine, you're blowing it out of proportion.
And in fact, Jazz did basically say that, put out a statement saying, I don't regret anything, I'm happy, and this and that. But once you are already this far down that road, how much can we really take that to be real? We know that you have so much at stake just within your family dynamics to keep this up. Not to mention the money and the idea that you would have to come to terms with the idea that you have done this to yourself and you didn't want to. And you didn't know any better, and your own family pushed you into this. That's a lot to deal with. So it does make sense that Jazz would just dissociate and be like, oh, no, yeah, this is totally fine.
Does this not warrant the DeSantis administration to say, hey, TLC, we'd like to see the footage that you have because you've been documenting this family for a decade because we're concerned about potential abuse that's going on?
And remember, this isn't just some random family. This is a public figure where their entire family is making money on a reality TV show on national TV.
Instead, what happens is when I tweet this video and said, where's Ron DeSantis? This is all happening in Florida. I get a response from Christina Pushaw and Jeremy Redfern, the press people for DeSantis. Ron DeSantis doesn't have a time machine. He can't go back 5 years and prevent this from happening. And then they turn it into this, how dare you criticize Ron DeSantis? You're a grifter who wants clickbait. And I said, okay, you know what? Here's where I'm at. I'm sorry, Christina and Jeremy and the DeSantis administration. I had no idea. If in Florida, a person can go on television and say that they're going to force a dilator into a wound of their child, and if they don't do it, they're going to wring their neck. If that is legal and acceptable in Florida, I am sorry I made the mistake of thinking there should be some kind of inquiry into whether or not that could be abuse.
Based. That's how you handle that. Oh, fine. If you're okay with this, then my bad. I just, I saw something wrong here. But if you think this is totally fine, then all right, I'll be voting for Trump. That's how it works.
Well, my question for you guys, I suppose, is play the video and then ask me if you think this warrants a simple question being asked with a knock on the door.
So remember, guys, Munchausen by proxy. I want to know, do you guys think this fits the same thing as a mother poisoning her child to get the attention from doctors, family, friends, the community, whoever else?
But with her, I'm worried about like her mental well-being and her dilation. The minute she leaves my house, we have a dilation problem.
The minute she leaves my house, we have a dilation problem.
That is a concern. When you don't have that watchful eye, they tend to go back to old patterns.
If you don't have that watchful eye, they tend to go back to old patterns. Again, how does this not tell you, oh, maybe they don't want to continue down this road?
I have woken Jazz out of a dead sleep and taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your vagina. If not, I will. But
you put it in your vagina or I will. Totally fine, right?
Jazz is bad, even when I'm home once a day.
How old is
So
Jazz?
mad if
22.
Can you pause it?
Wait. Is that the mother right there?
That's
Yeah,
let it keep
no,
going,
you
let
gotta
it
play
keep
the
going.
rest.
Keep to the
Play
rest.
If you miss that, she's 22. The Jazz is 22 years old.
goes away to college and that thing seals up, I wring her neck.
Listen to it again. Listen to it again.
Goes away to college and that thing seals up,
If she goes away to college
wring her neck.
and that thing
Can you
seals up,
imagine?
I'm going
What
to
a
wring her
demon.
neck.
Now, what do you imagine Jazz Jennings?
What show is this on? What channel is this on?
It's TLC. It's called I think it's called I Am
Okay,
Jazz.
so I got a few questions, legally questions I'm going to ask. Okay, I know you're going hardcore at DeSantis with this, and he's got a million things he's dealing with, and
I didn't even go. I said, "Where's Ron DeSantis on this?"
I get that. Let me just kind of give you my side, and trust me, if you watch our podcast, some people would say we're not a DeSantis podcast because I challenge hardcore marketing, book launch. Anyways, I'm not going to go there. All I'm saying to you is, so number one, TLC has a legal team. Okay, before TLC thinks this is okay to put up, their lawyers have to say no, we can't put this, or else it's going to be a lawsuit. Okay.
Somebody dropped the ball there.
Okay. So every media at that size is going to have something like this. Like when you publish a book, you've done this before where, the Simon & Schuster lawyers will come out and say, yeah, this story, you have to use a different name. You can't use this person's name because it's going to be a lawsuit. We want to have nothing to do with it. Okay, great. So you can go independently, launch it, or you can go through them, but their lawyers is going to have that call with you. So check. I don't know what TLC did. Their responsibility. Number two, if Jazz is 22 and she is defending in that one reaction video she made. She says, my mom's the best mom in the world. No, she didn't do anything wrong. I'm not regretting any of my decisions right now. She did the right thing because I'm so glad she did that. I'm just a depressed person. I'm just going through hard times in my life. I've always been like this.
That's pretty much what the release said, which would obviously, think about Britney Spears and the conservatorship thing. How many years did she, everything's totally fine. Was it though? Of course not.
And so she defends that. So that kind of is, if you're saying the person next door that you go to, husband and wife, it's loud, what's going on? I want to go defend. And then she said, well, we're just having rough sex. And we do that every night. So unless move your apartment to a different place, or you're going to hear this every night because this is how we have sex and we're ever happy about it. So what do you say now? Okay, you can now defend it. So if the daughter, who's now 22, an adult, is saying this, that's not something that, they can do anything with. If it's a kid, to me, the concern is, 5 years ago, if it's 22, that's why they're saying 5 years ago because she was 17. Yeah, at that time, you're 100% right. My problem isn't with TLC. My problem is the 11 years ago ABC showing it with the verbiage that they're using, making it seem like this is okay. And then now this person's being turned into a hero as a mother, and other people are watching this, and you're hearing stories about how Dwayne Wade to defend DeSantis, if there's anything that you're getting with people that have trans kids. DeSantis is running Florida, okay? Dwayne Wade comes out and is being interviewed. I don't know if you saw this one or not just recently. And he says, well, I just, as much as I love Florida, and, we love the no taxes and a lot of great things over there. We have a lot of great friends. I just didn't feel safe for my child and all this other stuff. And now we're going to move in. They're living in LA right now because he's doing a whole Hollywood thing himself, Gabrielle, all that stuff. Great. That's a choice that he made. But that to me would be the ultimate example of what a job DeSantis is doing with the state of Florida, that he's forcing people like this to say, like, where does Jazz Jennings live right now? Are they living in
South
Florida?
Florida, yeah.
South Florida.
Broward Virtual School, by the way, is 15 minutes away in Coconut Creek.
And the
you can go there right now.
And the mother.
He's good.
And the mother, the whole family lives here. That's where they're at.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for them, go ahead.
Oh no, I want to. You can finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah. TLC, the lawyers, the age, where she's at today. DeSantis 5 years ago. I mean,
let me give you a hypothetical. If you saw a video of
So really, it sounds like PBD isn't, justifying this. He's just taking Tim's thing about, hey, DeSantis, you need to step in here and bringing in some actual practical legal questions. Because the fact of the matter is, Jazz is an adult now, regardless of what could have or should have been done. Jazz is an adult.
a father, an adult man says, every day I wake up my daughter and I grab the penetrator and say, you stick this in your vagina or I'll do it. Would you arrest? Would you go and be like, okay, hold on there a minute. Like, let's go have a conversation with this family.
Yeah.
I would contact that media company to say, what makes you think this is normal for you to play?
Well,
and I would want to investigate the parents that are doing that at the time. Yes.
I mean, now, just knock on the door. Knock on the door. Is everything okay here? I mean, that sounded kind of like, what's the context of why? Now, I understand the response is the dilation is a medical practice that Jazz must do. But if Jazz isn't doing it, does that not imply Jazz is uninterested in doing it and saying you're going to wring their neck or hold or do it for them?
Don't get it twisted. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm with you. I mean, there's no.
Now, let me address the law enforcement thing. Victims don't prosecute; the state does. The victim is not necessary in the prosecution of a crime. If the police are made aware of a crime, it does not matter what the victim says.
So maybe there's an avenue where, there's a statute of limitations and, Jazz wouldn't be in trouble because Jazz was a victim. But the mother certainly did something, a lot of things that, maybe we could take a look at. So I don't know. What do you guys think about Jazz Jennings? What do you think about Tim's position? What do you think about PBD's decision? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Once again, this is Morty, and I have been your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Check us out live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and 24/7 in the Discord server. And if you're still here, leave Morty's name in the comments and you might get a shout out in the next video. Until then, guys, we are out of here. Peace.